What if the parts of yourself you're desperately trying to hide are actually the key to freedom from perfectionism, the constant exhaustion of trying to be flawless, the fear that creeps in when you make a mistake, the crushing self-criticism when you fall short? These aren't just struggles with high standards. They're symptoms of a deeper battle with your own shadow self. Today, I'm sharing practical, Jung-inspired steps to stop fighting your imperfections and start integrating them in ways that will transform your relationship with yourself. This isn't about lowering your standards. It's about becoming whole. If you've ever found yourself redoing work that others would consider excellent, or feeling like an imposter despite your achievements, or lying awake replaying minor social blunders, welcome. You're in the right place. And you're far from alone. Perfectionism isn't just about high standards or attention to detail. At its core, it's a fear of being seen as flawed, inadequate, or unworthy. What if I told you that this fear comes from a fundamental misunderstanding of who you really are? Carl Jung, one of history's most influential psychologists, introduced us to a concept called the shadow self. Your shadow isn't some mystical entity. It's simply the collection of traits, emotions, and impulses that you've deemed unacceptable and pushed into the unconscious. The messy, imperfect, sometimes selfish or angry or lazy parts that don't fit your ideal self-image. Here's the paradox. The harder you try to reject these parts, the more power they gain over you. The more you insist on perfectionism, the more your shadow rebels through burnout, anxiety, and an overwhelming sense that you're never enough. Today, we're exploring how to stop this exhausting battle through shadow integration, not by eliminating your imperfections, but by acknowledging, accepting, and even finding value in them. I'll share 5 practical steps inspired by Jungian psychology that you can start applying today. Step 1. Recognize your perfectionistic patterns. Let's start with awareness. When does your perfectionism flare up most intensely? Is it in professional settings, relationships, your appearance, or something else? Notice the language of your inner critic. Does it say things like, "I can't show this to anyone until it's flawless. If I make this mistake, everyone will see I'm a fraud. I should be able to handle everything without help." Now, imagine these thoughts coming from someone else. Would you consider them reasonable or excessively harsh? This gap between how you judge yourself versus others is where your shadow hides. Try this exercise. For the next 3 days, keep a small journal of your perfectionistic thoughts. Don't judge them, just notice them. Where do they come from? What rejected parts of yourself might they be protecting? Just this awareness begins the integration process. Step 2. Meet your shadow through projection. Jung observed that we often project our shadow qualities onto others. The traits that irritate you most in other people often reveal disowned aspects of yourself. Think about someone who really gets under your skin. Maybe they're disorganized, emotional, or make mistakes you'd never allow yourself to make. Now, ask yourself, is there a small part of you that wishes you could express that same quality without judgment? The colleague whose work you find sloppy might represent the part of you that longs to create freely without constant self-censorship. The friend whose emotional outbursts annoy you might reflect your own suppressed need for emotional expression. This isn't about blaming yourself for your irritations. It's about using them as mirrors to see what you've rejected in yourself. Try this reflection question. What quality in others bothers me most? And how might embracing a small degree of this quality actually benefit me? Step 3. Create a dialogue with your shadow. Now comes the fascinating part, actually communicating with your shadow aspects. This might sound unusual, but it's a powerful Jungian technique. Choose one imperfect quality you've identified. Maybe it's your tendency toward procrastination, your secret envy of others, or your need for validation. Instead of suppressing it, give it a voice. You might write a letter from this part of yourself, explaining why it exists and what it needs. Or have an imagined conversation where you ask questions like, what are you trying to protect me from? What would you like me to understand about you? What happens when I constantly reject you? What often emerges is surprising. These flawed parts usually have legitimate needs or fears beneath their surface. Your perfectionism might be protecting you from the rejection you felt as a child when making mistakes. Your procrastination might be a desperate plea for rest in an overwhelming life. Step 4. Find the gold in your shadow. Jung believed that our shadow doesn't just contain negative qualities, it also houses some of our greatest potential strengths. He called this the gold in the shadow. Your perfectionism, when integrated rather than acting unconsciously, transforms into healthy striving for excellence without the self-punishment. Your fear of vulnerability, once acknowledged, can become appropriate boundary setting and discernment. Try this reframing exercise. For each shadow trait you've identified, ask, how could a balanced expression of this trait serve me? What wisdom or strength might it contain? How might accepting this part make me more authentic and whole? A client of mine who always criticized her laziness discovered that when she stopped fighting this shadow aspect, it was actually her body's wisdom signaling needed rest and integration time, something her perfectionism never allowed. Step 5. Practice imperfection intentionally. The final step requires courage, deliberately practicing imperfection in safe context. This isn't about sabotaging important work, but about creating space where your perfectionistic grip can loosen. Start small, share a draft before it's polished, voice an opinion without researching it exhaustively first, allow yourself to be a beginner at something new without expecting immediate mastery. Notice the discomfort that arises. This is your shadow integration happening in real time. Breathe into it rather than escaping it. One powerful practice is to intentionally fail at something minor daily. Send an email with a small, harmless mistake. Leave one task unfinished. Share an incomplete idea. Then observe. Did the catastrophic consequences your perfectionism predicted actually occur? As you practice these steps, something remarkable happens. The energy you've been using to maintain a perfect facade becomes available for genuine growth and creativity. The parts you've been hiding become sources of authenticity that actually deepen your connections with others. Clients who've done this work report more genuine relationships where they no longer feel they're performing, increased creativity as they're no longer paralyzed by fear of mistakes, reduced anxiety and physical tension, greater compassion for themselves and others, more effective work as they focus on impact rather than perfection. Remember, integration doesn't mean your standards disappear. It means they become choices rather than compulsions. You can still pursue excellence, but without the crushing weight of believing your worth depends on it. Jung wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." Your shadow isn't your enemy. It's the missing piece of your wholeness. Shadow integration isn't a one-time event, but an ongoing practice. Begin today with just one step, perhaps the awareness journal I suggested, or identifying a projection. Notice what shifts when you approach your imperfections with curiosity rather than condemnation. I'd love to hear about your experiences with perfectionism and shadow work. What parts of yourself have you been rejecting? What happened when you began acknowledging them? Share in the comments below. If this approach resonates with you, subscribe for more depth psychology approaches to modern challenges. Next week, we'll explore how Jung's concept of the persona affects your authentic self-expression. Until then, remember, becoming whole isn't about becoming perfect. It's about embracing all that you are. Your shadow isn't just where your demons hide. It's also where some of your greatest gifts are waiting to be reclaimed.